Greetings everyone, and welcome to LEGO Rewind, where we take another look at old retired LEGO themes. And today's topic can't be done proper justice without also covering Blacktron and the galaxy at large. This was an interesting time for LEGO space, beginning with Futuron, which for all intents and purposes was simply the next wave of classic space, even carrying the same logo as those gray, blue, and yellow ships from the beginning. But it was really the end of an era, a time of transition as space became a more hostile place to be in 1987. Blacktron immediately stood out with its black, yellow, and red stylings and made for a very harsh look at the time, but the minifigs themselves weren't particularly evil looking. We wouldn't see that much personality for a few more years. The vehicles had some pretty unique shaping given the limited parts, and it certainly brings into question people's assertions that later LEGO products have increased their focus on large, extremely specialized pieces. You know, as opposed to this. My favorite is this one. With this placement of the cockpit, it feels like an evil Millennium Falcon. Lopsided asymmetrical ships in general just appeal to me. I remember getting some Legos as a kid with tires like that. They don't make them in that style anymore, and probably for the best. It was really easy to tear the little nubs apart with that open zipper design. See, it's a bit more closed up now. And yes, their symbol is an upside down Triforce. You can stop putting it out in the comments. For a time, Blacktron wasn't really evil, they were just kind of morally gray. Annoying, but not exactly scary.
Okay, you're it. Start counting.
But as they grew more aggressive, raiding installations across the galaxy over the next few years, a special task force would step in to counter them.
The Space Police!
And the relationship between these three sub-themes perfectly encapsulates what was great about this new era of old space. Nowadays, you'd have some elements of either faction mixed into a single set, that conflict in a box deal. It'd all be under one name, but back then, you could simply have two or more separate lines running alongside each other and sometimes marketed together with some connection implied but not explicit. They complemented each other in a way, but you could also say they competed with each other, so there's a potential downside. You have the good guy Space Police to one side, bad guy Blacktron to the other, and civilian Futuron caught in the middle. It felt big. It was like having one giant line span across the final frontier, but it was more of a cold war than a hot one. Neither side could really defeat the other completely because they were both so spread out. They just had to deal with each other now and then whenever a conflict popped up. Keep an eye on the other. The Space Police themselves had a bold look of their own, even more aggressive looking than Blacktron and blending beautifully into the void itself if not for the flashing red lights. Like many space lines before and after, they were fairly modular, separating into many chunks that could be switched around and combined. And one element shared across most of the wave were the cells. This gimmick would evolve in later lines, but this version is my favorite with the laser bars. Just big enough to contain one minifig, these could be stored on the vehicles for transport. Attractive and functional.
Space Spider trapped into forced landing. You can't escape the LEGO Space Police, no matter how many
Spider? That's just a normal human Blacktron guy. I mean, they'd have no problem designing a Space Spider now, but even back then, there was a lot of clever building trickery, like how they connected that hinged turret that wraps around the driver from behind. And they got some sleek new pieces that made them much sharper, more streamlined, and advanced than Blacktron. But it wouldn't take Blacktron long to bounce back in 1991, the year I was born. This generation of Blacktron had a loud new look, with some white thrown in and trends neon green everywhere. These builds look about as alien as before. I'm sure it's just a coincidence this one is shaped like a helicopter. But they were more rugged, better equipped to combat the Space Police than before. Someone even rebuilt a Space Police ship brick for brick in Blacktron colors, like they stole and rebranded it just to mess with the Space Cops. While the color choices bug me in some ways, appearing just a little obnoxious, they're beautifully complemented by the backgrounds. The advertising shows them based right near... I can't tell if that's supposed to be a dwarf star or a gas giant, but the proximity makes these guys look cool by association. There's nowhere too dangerous for them. In response, there was another wave of Space Police with their own new look. I like some of the designs and some things about their new palette. Overall, I think it looks a little bland, more militarized, but less personality, which I guess fits? Interestingly, the Space Police 1 prototypes were green too, and I think switching to blue was a smart move. It has some neat tricks of its own, though the new cells are too big and chunky for my liking. Less interesting or efficient than the laser bars. It was a rock-solid wave, I just didn't like it quite as much as Space Police 1. There was also M-Tron, a more independent task force that did rescue operations and sometimes assisted the Space Police directly. They're kinda like the Thunderbirds, but even these guys aren't perfectly moral. The civilian side this time is a group we know well, the Ice Planet team. This has taken me back. here we are approaching the end of this season and we've looped back around to the beginning. And as we've seen in other episodes, space would only get crazier from there. When you look back through all the years, there are so many classic space sets because it went on uninterrupted for so long. The hardest part for LEGO must have been simply coming up with new names for all these contraptions. Solar Snooper? Okay. Blacktron had some pretty cool names, like the Alienator. That works so well. But Space Police 2 has one of the coolest ship names of all, the Galactic Meter. Ugh, love it. Been waiting forever just to say it. I like how these two lines effectively got their own sequels. It was an arms race that went back and forth for a while, kind of like a Cold War in space. But it wouldn't be that way forever. Blacktron's last set was released in 1993, a combination of a few sets called the Supermodel. Okay, Unitron outright replaced Space Police in 1994, but I think I'll save that for Season 3. After a long break, 2009 brought us Space Police 3. No one saw this coming. And I like it, but not for the same reasons. Like past waves, they still had modular designs and pods to capture crooks with, although this time you could bust them open and break them out, so the features are all still there, though now there was a bigger focus on transformations and projectiles. But the aesthetic leaves me firmly whelmed. I like how alien, how far removed from modern Earth designed Space Police 1 and 2 were. I could buy that being future humanity, but not for a long time. That's part of what was cool about it. It was recognizable as a sort of police force, but not too much like ours. But with their broad, smooth white shapes and red and blue elements, these look very terrestrial. They look like today's police equipment, which makes this wave more relatable in a way, and it does at least stand out from the other generations of Space Police, but it also becomes inherently mundane. It's not a bad concept, just kinda limiting. And another thing, where the heck is Blacktron? I get that they couldn't dedicate an entire separate line to them anymore, but for one reason or another, they aren't a part of this, even though we had a golden opportunity for it. The two factions appearing together in every set, one united theme with Blacktron getting its own updated look. I think one reason they didn't do this may be because they just finished Mars Mission, and at least coloring-wise, the invaders in that line are very Blacktron-like, and in 2010 we'd see Atlantis' sea monsters, which are also similarly designed. Heck, some believe this is an old-school LEGO Space tribute, with a red and green mech referencing M-Tron and the mouse snake referencing Blacktron. I can see that. So yeah, sandwiched between these two themes, they would have had to completely overhaul Blacktron just to make it stand out. So instead, we get a range of small-time criminals with freaky but goofy and even lovable designs. They don't have a problem making aliens now, but something about this still bothers me. Why are no aliens on the Space Police side? Why don't we see any aliens ally themselves with humanity? And don't think this is me getting political again. This is something that people thought was weird in 2009, from the word go. Are the humans in this line just conquering the rest of space and rounding up anyone who defies our rule? I personally think that could be kind of interesting. The idea of it being the Starship Troopers like fascist regime. Heck, they actually look like Starship Troopers. But is that the best future to sell to 7-year-olds? There's something weirdly chilling about this that I'm sure was not intentional on LEGO's part, but is something people have had to grapple with for about a decade now. In any case, the Space Police ships are very sleek and cool, and the Crooks vehicles are even more weirdly Earth-like. It's all in good fun, just not in the same spirit as older Space Police. Maybe it's just me, but I would have preferred if they continued running with, repetitive as it may be to keep saying this, that Cold War atmosphere they had going. Introduce an actual rival faction that can take on the Space Police, actually stand a chance against them, instead of a bunch of random dopey aliens that don't feel like a threat desperately scrambling to hide from this expansionist human empire. But even with what we got, you could ask questions about what man's role to play in the stars is, what our destiny is once we take that step. How will we treat other life when we find it? Exploit it? Crush it under our heel? Are we the baddies? Only future generations will know, assuming we make it that far. It's just part of the larger picture of LEGO Space's recent direction that's left me kinda jaded, as I already expressed towards the beginning of this season. But no one can take away how striking, how cool the original Space Police is, and mockists at least seem to agree with me. The aesthetic isn't that far off, using some more modern, curvier pieces here and there, but not so much that it completely loses those harsh, blocky edges and corners. Interestingly, while I did find mocks based on all three eras, Space Police 2 is kinda left out. There were plenty of mocks for 1 and 3, kind of an arms race in its own right between old and new, and plenty of spectacular, breathtaking Blacktron mocks, and a decent handful of Space Police 2, which it seems will forever be the middle child, and we may never see anything like Space Police again. But who's to say? LEGO surprised me a couple of times already during the lifespan of this show. But that's it for today. If you want to support my work, please consider my graphic novel series, Planet Ripple. You can buy the books on Amazon or read an early draft of the first book for free. Links to everything in the description. Next up, something special to kick off the Season 2 finale. The Interrupter, now that's a good name.
Traveling with a cargo of dreaded outlaws, the rebel hunter is down. Its prisoners escape. There's only one hope, the Lego Maniac.
Dude! Space Police mobilized! Planetary Patrol, rock and roll! Ugly space dudes, there's no escape from most righteous justice.
Today there is peace, but only the Lego Maniac knows what the stars hold for tomorrow.
Most cosmic.
The Lego Systems Space Police Collection. Each sold separately, only from Lego.